Hello there, welcome to Alternata Theatre's first video vlog. My name is Josh Hines and this is my co-director Alia Supron.
Hi.
And we're here to talk to you about our first specialism theatre called Grand Guignol.
So the style that we're doing our production in is called Grand Guignol, and we've been researching quite a bit about this. There's unfortunately not all that many mediums to research as it's not a very well known style, but we found a few. So the first one we've been using is the Hand and Wilson book, which is absolutely amazing. It's got like 10 plays in the back of it, which are French translations into English, and we did 2 of them last year, which we'll talk about in a minute. So we've been using that, which was absolutely amazing. We also used Clive Barker's A to Z of Horror, which I'll put a link in the description. I'll put a little link over Josh's face right here so that you can click on that. It's on YouTube and it's really good. It's got interviews with some of the original actors from the Grand Guignol, so it's really cool. We've also been using one of the extra features on the Sweeney Todd DVD. There is Grand Guignol, A Theatrical Tradition, which has interviews with Hand and Wilson, as well as sort of showing you like the style itself, modern interpretations, and it also teaches you about the thrill peddlers, who are kind of the most prolific Grand Guignol people around at the moment. Like, their productions bring in loads and loads of people. They do their annual Shocktoberfest, which I'm determined to go and see at some point. It's going to be amazing. But yeah, and they do originals and they write their own Grand Guignol pieces. So that's kind of the old research that we've done. And
For our next step in researching Grand Guignol, we're taking this thing back home. We were thinking of going to Paris, the home of Grand Guignol and its theatre styles, to actually go and see what it was like originally. And what was it? The town of it was Pigalle. Pigalle is where it was started in Paris, in a what's the word? Deconsecrated. That's the one. In a deconsecrated chapel, which is where the theatre originated, which we'll be talking about in a little bit. So we're going to go there, get a good idea of what it was like, because it was near where the Moulin Rouge was originally, and we'll have a better idea of what the actual theatre was like when it was there in its prime, and actually see what, Grand Guignol was like as it started from the beginning.
One of the reasons why we're doing the research trip is I went to the original theatre about 3 years ago now. But unfortunately it was closed because I went during August, and I got there on August the 3rd and it had closed 3 days beforehand because they don't open during August, which was kind of sad. But I really got a feel for like the actual walk itself, because the route that I went from near the Sacré-Cœur down the road through this sort of quite sleazy area of Pigalle, and you got like the Moulin Rouge and all these sort of very colourful shops on the way, and then you sort of turn a corner, and like a lot of our researchers, a lot of people in our research have said, it's not a place you would stumble upon, it's a place that you have to know where it is to find it, and the whole atmosphere completely changes when you go there. It's absolutely amazing. You sort of go from like these paved streets and everything's really busy to just this really quiet, desolate cobblestone sort of street with a dead end, which is where the theatre is. It's currently, or at least it was a few years ago, a theatre for deaf people. So it's not the original. It has changed hands quite a lot since then. But fingers crossed, when we go in September, we will actually be able to go inside. And from what I've heard, they have kept a few of the original sort of pieces and bits of architecture. So it would be really awesome to go there. So yeah, is that a bit about...
Hello, Josh here again, and I'm here to talk to you about my play in the Grand Guignol series, which was called Final Kiss, written by Maurice Lavelle in 1912, set in France like many others. And this one's a story of revenge complete. The pre-story of the play itself is a man is caught cheating on his wife, and his wife, doing the meaningful and reasonable thing, throws a small bottle of vitriol on his face, dissolving away most of his facial features and practically blinding the man. When we see him in the play, we see that he is now living in a halfway house, being tended to by a doctor. He's been released from hospital, and he is still coping, just about. He has suffered horribly, his face is burned, he is covered in bandages, and he is only a shadow of the man he probably was before. And as it goes along, it's revealed how, as a person, he was clearly not a very nice person. Not a good person at all. The fact that he cheated on his wife is evidence to that. But he helped her get out of prison, and get out of a long-term sentence, which is something which is interesting. You wouldn't have thought that, having acid thrown on your face, you would have wanted that for your wife. But it is revealed at the end that he let her out for a darker reason. She came to visit him at his request so that he could get his revenge, and return the favour by pouring vitriol over her face as well. Now, the interesting thing about this one is, even though the gore is reduced right to the very end, so it's not as violent as some of the other plays, it does still have that rather harrowing sense and the suspense of what are they going to do, what do they want. And as a director, the thing which I wanted to bring across this one was, rather than try and get it to be a quite clean story of maybe forgiveness which turns at the end, make it clear that this is his intention, make it clear that he has an agenda, as he is not a nice person. No, there are no good characters in this play whatsoever. There are people who attempt to act like the good person, and they do good deeds, but there are no good characters in Final Kiss whatsoever. And that comes across very strongly, especially when you see Jian, who's his wife. She's still the arrogant woman that she was made out to be beforehand. And much like her husband, she doesn't have the same sort of... or she doesn't have any kind of real... well, what's the best way to describe her? The best way to describe her probably would be the fact that she's very sorry for what she did, but she's not sorry for why she did it, shall we say. She regrets throwing acid on his face, but she still believes him to be a bad person. So she's not there to reconcile, she's there more out of the kindness, out of her own belief, to make herself look better. So yeah, that's what I liked about her. And for Henri, because he has been damaged by this acid attack, and because he was made into a shadow of himself, he needed to be a very distant, very aloof person who, when he wasn't going to speak, it needed to be what I like to call a cliff silence. The sort of silence that makes you think they're never going to talk again. And when they do talk, it's got to come as a surprise, especially in the first half of the play, when there's a doctor and a nurse who come to visit him in his halfway house. And those two are chatting quite amicably, in fact, about him while he's in the room, less than 6 feet away from them. And they're talking about his incidents like it's over a nice drink in the pub, maybe. And when he talks, it comes across as a surprise. They forget almost that he's in the room. They forget that they're in his room, in his house, while they're talking about him. And that was one thing I wanted to get across with him, that he is still meant to be a shadow, effectively, in this play. Apart from when Jian comes in and he steps into the light, as it were. And you get to see a bit more of what he's like, especially around her, considering that they were married. And the doctor and nurse, well, there's what to be said about them, really, is that they are there to kind of set the scene, to give you the idea of what Jian and Henri's past was like. And when they start to come full circle and talking fully about what those two went through, you already do get the sense that rather than it just being a case of, pardon me, rather than it just being a case of a simple revenge and a simple plot turned around and brought back to this show, that you actually do get a better idea that neither of them, like I say, are good people. They are both with an agenda, and they both have a very sadistic side that really is really strongly brought out in Final Kiss. Right? And that's all there really is to say about Final Kiss, to be honest. Apart from it's a good play, I'd recommend reading it. It's harrowing at times, especially Jian's massive ego and Henri's rather sadistic nature. But it's worth the read, so thank you for listening.
Hey there, so it's Ali again, and we've just heard Josh talking about directing Final Kiss, and I thought I'd kind of talk a little bit about acting before I go on to talk about the play which I directed last year, because I actually I acted in Final Kiss, and I played Jean, or Jean, depending on whether you anglicise the name. We decided to anglicise the names in the end just because they were sort of easier, it helped more with the flow of speech, and it sounded a little bit funny when we sort of randomly put in these French names. So we had Henry and Jean instead of Henri and Jean. So random little side note there. And acting in a Grand Guignol production is very, very different to anything I've done before. I'm more trained in musical theatre, and I've done very few sort of straight plays, as they're sort of known, or at least as I call them. And Grand Guignol was very, very different to anything I'd done before, because I felt a lot of the acting was internal, as opposed to sort of musical theatre where it's all out there and it's all, this is my emotion and this is this and audience know this and stuff. Whereas Grand Guignol being more internal, it took a lot more preparation than I think any role I've ever done before. Having all of these, this complete backstory that we created, me and my friend who was playing Henry. And it was really interesting, and it's a challenge for any actor to take on a role like Jean, Henry, or indeed any Grand Guignol role, as there's that much internalness to it. So when we're casting, we have to make sure that we, really cast strong actors and actresses who are willing to put in the work to create this whole backstory, because at the end of it, it's absolutely beautiful what you can create. And some of the characters who came out last year in our showcase, they just completely blossomed because they put in this hard work and dedication. And yeah, that's kind of mainly sort of my stance on the acting, is to make sure that we've got that internal sort of stuff and the pre-work, which is one reason that we cast our production, which we're doing at Halloween, so early, so that people really had time to look at their characters and to create this whole backstory, which they can sort of bring to the table in September when we start rehearsals. So yeah, that's kind of my acting bit. So the play which I directed was called Kiss of Blood, and this was the first play in our showcase. We had 4 plays and 2 skits, and we'll kind of talk a little bit about the layout of the production in a moment. But it was the only 2-actor out of our production, so it was a little bit different to some Grand Guignol productions. Most of them are 1 act, they last about half an hour, and they will stay within 1 room, and that's just it. You don't get set changes, you don't get anything like that. Whereas Kiss of Blood, you started out in a hospital ward and you ended in someone's house. So that was a little bit different to some of the originals. It was written by Jean Aron. I'm really bad at pronouncing names. I will put their names at the bottom. But it was written by 2 different people, one of them being Francis Nelson and the other one being Jean. I can't pronounce the last name because I'm terrible like that. But Kiss of Blood was essentially, it was more of a thriller than a horror. There were some horror elements to it, which were really fun to do. But generally it was a thriller. You had a man who had been in love with this woman, and they had, they'd got on really well, they were engaged, and then he found these letters of hers which made it look like she was cheating on him. So he never confronted her about it, which it draws a lot of questions in about the character from the off. But so he never confronts her, he just takes her to the Seine, and they go on this river tour or boat. It's not really sort of defined specifically. All you know is that they go to the Seine and he basically shoots her, and he thinks that she's died. He identifies as her body someone else who's been dragged from the Seine, just so that it's all out of the way and done with, and he sort of tries to go back and live his life. Unbeknownst to him, she has actually survived. The